So I was going in thinking I should win a medal. I'm in a good position to win a medal. If I execute a good swim, I should be able to win a medal. And my coach, Dave, about 2 or 3 days before the Olympic final, he said, look, you need to start thinking about winning the Olympic Games. You need to start thinking about winning an Olympic gold in that 200 meters freestyle, because you can't go in there not thinking about that, having not wrapped your head around it and expect it to happen all of a sudden. You need to go through that process in your head, because he said no one's ever won an Olympic gold thinking they can't do it, you know.
Welcome to Social Kick. I'm Brian Lundquist. We got a full crew: Dr. John Mullen, Luke Paddington, and he's the Olympic champion in the 200 free. He's the host of the Weekly Freestyle, Tom Dean. What's up, Tom?
Hi, guys. How you doing?
Man, we're good. All right, before we get into this, we got a couple quick rapid-fire questions for you. I don't need to know. Is it a swimming cap or a swimming hat?
Swimming cap.
Okay. Is it prelims, heats, or trials?
Oh, heats. Yeah, heats.
True or false, British swimming announcer Andy Jameson overuses the phrase, "my goodness me"?
Probably true, but I like him, so I'm going to say false.
Oh, that's all good. We'll hit some more later. But mate, thanks for coming on. It was actually really fun to listen to your podcast and all the stuff that you guys do at the Weekly Freestyle. I want to hear first about that. How'd you get into it? And tell us about it.
So well, firstly, thank you very much for having me on your podcast. But no, so Alex, my co-host, he's been a mate of mine for ages, you know, a number of years. And he's one of those guys who just like takes an interest in any sport. You know, he loves swimming, he loves football. He's a big Liverpool fan like myself. You know, he follows all the different sports and he's unreal at them as well. Like, he plays loads of sports. And he's really into his sport podcast as well. And it was before the Commonwealth Games last year. So I got back from World Champs in Budapest, and it was kind of, we had like a month between Worlds and Commies. And I think Alex was coming back from holiday or something, and he'd listened to a podcast, and he was trying to think what he could do in that space. And obviously we're really good mates, so he was like, look, let's try and do one kind of based around swimming, but also just a bit of a laugh, you know, two mates and kind of commentating on what we're doing and what's going on in our lives. And we did a few episodes of the Commonwealth Games. We did an episode while I was out in Melbourne at the World Short Course, you know, while I was in Australia on camp. So we've done loads and loads of episodes, and it's just so interesting interacting with people along the way who have questions and kind of want an insight into my life as an athlete. And it's the way we look at it is we have someone who's kind of on the inside looking out, you know, an elite sports person living that life, and someone who's kind of just a supporter and a fan looking in and finding what's interesting and funny, but two really good mates at the same time. So that's kind of the approach we took. And yeah, we just have a laugh with it. You know, we record every Sunday night if we can, and we did one last week, and we're going to try and do like a British Champ special in the next 2 weeks. So it's just a bit of fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, I like seeing athletes kind of just express themselves and open themselves up to, you know, sharing a bit of their story. Because it's fun when you're on the outside of that world of elite athletics to follow and get the inside scoop of, you know, what's happening on behind the scenes outside of just the pure coverage that you see of the race. There's so much more behind it. And I think the athletes that are starting to open themselves up more, whether it's like via a vlog or they're just share a lot on Instagram or what have you, they're starting to build a fan base and an audience. Yeah. And I think it creates more commercial opportunities for them too, to just like have a lot of longevity or earn some cash and really make a career out of it. Yeah,
100%. Social media is like almost as big as the results you're doing in the pool. It feels like sometimes, you know, it's written into all our contracts. You have to have a certain number of social media. I mean, you look at Michael Andrew. He did really, you know, he's done really well on the social media side of things. Obviously, he's a great swimmer as well. You know, he's got some decent medals to his name and stuff, but the social media almost came before that, didn't it? You know, I know he was a good junior and stuff, but like, he was known for his social media presence, and I think he's been able to go on and reap the benefits of that. And I think it comes really naturally to some people, comes really naturally to some athletes. And, you know, for me personally, the social media side of things, not so much. You know, I kind of have to not force it, but think through what I'm doing a little bit more and be slightly more proactive. And I'm always trying to be on it when I can. But stuff like the podcasting, I just love talking about that kind of stuff. And, you know, I guess it's just about finding your niche, isn't it, really?
Yeah, you got to have the good omnipresence, right? Now you're on the podcasting world, you have your social media. Are there any other channels that you think swimmers or just kind of athletes in similar sports can continue to maybe look into and grow as well?
I think vlogging's become really big, hasn't it? What's his name? The American swimmer, he's a breaststroker.
Cody Miller.
I think he might fit Cody Miller. That's it. He's really on it with the vlogs, isn't he? I remember he did really well with all of his vlogging and stuff like that. So yeah, social media is so big, especially for like commercial opportunities now. So yeah, I think we forget how unusual our job is, and what we do on a day-to-day basis. But because you live it every day and you're surrounded by the people I interact with the most are the people doing exactly the same thing. So it's not unusual or abnormal to them. But to the outside, I tell someone about the sessions I'm doing or the, I don't know, the measurements that people are taking, the physiologists throughout the day and throughout the week and stuff like that. And it's so surreal and it's so different to any traditional job that people take a real keen interest in it. So I think it's definitely something to be said for giving, the general public a bit of an insight into elite athletes' lifestyles.
Does that help you, Tom? Does it help you keep yourself a little grounded? Because sometimes we get carried away with ourselves, like we don't realize how far we've come, or how hard we work, or how unique we do. So it keeps you grounded. Also makes you realize some sort of like satisfaction of what you've achieved for down moments. Do you have moments where people ask you, you swam how many meters this week?
Yeah. It is a bit like that. No, it absolutely is. And even with since winning the Olympics, it's been a little bit like that, because I remember when I was a junior, I started out at the National Centre, I'm 18, 19 years old. And I remember thinking, God, I just, to be on the Olympic team would be a dream of mine. That would be my lifelong dream from a kid to be an Olympic swimmer. That carries such a presence in America, just like in the UK, there's so much respect that's put on the name of an Olympian into a title that you can really carry through for the rest of your life. And then I think it's like those studies that have shown, when you have these sudden change or sudden spike or difference in your lifestyle, but after a number of months, it just becomes the norm again, doesn't it? And we're just, we're made to just settle back into it and become used to it and stuff like that. But I caught myself the other day. I can't remember what it was, but I think I had like a voice recording, or I did an interview or something when I was like 18 or 19, and this voice recording, the question was like, what do you want to do in the sport? And I said, I would just love to be qualify for the Olympic Games. That would be a dream come true of mine. I remember how hungry I was and how passionate I was to be an Olympian. And then I got there and I won. And it's crazy, the summer I had after the Olympic Games was nuts. I was here, there and everywhere, and I had all this media, and it was crazy. And then you spin forward to the winter or the following spring, or 18 months down the line like we are now, and it's just like, that's the norm now. You settle into it, and that's part of who you are, and you live that life. And I'm fortunate, I've got some great commercial partners, and I've able to, I've got myself a nice place in Bath where I live, and I'm settled here. But all this comes from the Olympic Games, and I think there is something to be said for, looking back slightly and thinking, actually, I've come quite far in the last 4.5 years since being at the National Centre, and I do train really hard, and I have won Olympic medals, and I have won world medals and international accolades. And while it's great to take a step back and think we've had this great journey, what's next? You don't want to do too much patting yourself on the back. There's always something next to come up. So I think it's finding a healthy balance for sure.
I think the opposite could be true as well, Tom. You realize why you did the sport in the first place. So you speak to that 12-year-old kid and like, oh yeah, that's why I jumped into the sport in the first place, was to take down Matt Richards, head to head. I don't care what time I did, I'd take Matt down.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think when it's easy for an athlete, especially a swimmer, because traditionally as a swimmer, you don't earn loads from the sport. We're not footballers. When you do get media coverage and you do start earning and you do get commercial partners, it's quite easy to get caught up in that. And I just know that there'll be a young swimmer coming up through the ranks.
That's right.
Who is solely focused on performance and on delivering results and stuff like that. And fortunately, I've been able to recognize that and hone in on that. And ultimately, all this other stuff, the sponsorships and things like that, that's secondary to the results. The results do have to come first. Yeah. And I'm very consciously aware of that. And that's, a credit to my coach, Dave McNulty, for constantly reminding me, that's really at the core of it. So, yeah, it's just being able to tap into that, like you said, that same hunger you had when you were a teenager.
You mentioned seeing this video of you when you were younger. Now, we're older, Luke much older, but we're all older than you, where we didn't have our stuff recorded when we were swimming and things like that. How much of that is nice to have as just kind of like a catalog and to, like you said, know where you came from? How much of it's kind of like cringe, or like, God, I can't believe I said that, or I thought I knew everything back then? Kind of what are your thoughts of having this kind of, like I said, video bio of you as an Olympian now?
I like to think, I think you kind of have to be conscious of your media presence off the back of being in the spotlight from Olympic Games and winning Olympic Games, and you have to be conscious that the words you choose have repercussions, and the message you send out will be heard by a number of people. You know, you have a bit of an audience, you know, even like a social media following, something that I suddenly gained. You know, I haven't got millions and millions of followers, but all of a sudden you've got a few tens of thousands of people looking at what you're doing. So you have to be quite conscious of the message you're putting out. And one thing I've been very aware of is not raise myself above the sport, in that I'm still an athlete who's still got to go to the trials and qualify. I still need to book my ticket on the plane. I still need to earn my spot on the relay. And I still need to do a good job when I get to these competitions. You know, one thing that I'm not a fan of is, for example, when people don't do well at like a certain competition, they downplay the competition. Oh, it's only Commonwealth Games. You know, I've won the Olympics, it's only Commonwealth Games. But actually, the Commonwealth Games is someone's biggest achievement, is getting on the team for the Commonwealth Games, and you're representing England, and you're walking out with the flag on your back. So you have every right to put respect to that competition that it deserves, regardless of the achievements you've done in the past. And I'm a big believer that you're only as good as your last result, and that's something I've tried to keep with me. So, you know, when you get a presence off the back of some results, you know, this is something my mum said to me when I finished the Olympics. She said, now you kind of have to give yourself up to the media slightly. You know, you have to have an image, and the way you carry yourself, the way you present yourself. So that's why I think it is good to look back at, you know, where you came from, and it is good to think, actually, I've been on this journey and I'm still on this journey, you know, and having that conscious eye looking at how you present yourself and how you kind of hold yourself in the public light, really.
Tom, did you stand behind the blocks in the Olympic final with the goal to win, especially as someone was coming only a few years back of saying that you just want to make the Olympic team, and just being there is obviously like an experience in itself, and a lot to take in too. A lot of first times, and then comes with a lot of pressure, and a different sort of pressure with, you know, nobody in the stands, but a lot of expectations, you know, back home watching you. What's the mentality standing behind the blocks of the Olympic final?
So I was going into the Olympic Games ranked second in the world behind Duncan, off the back of the times we'd swum at the British Champs, but there were quite a few lads kicking about on the 144s. So I was very aware of that fact. And, you know, you look at who was in that final, there's an incredible sorry guys, I'm just turn off. Sorry.
All good.
That's my alarm telling me to do the podcast with you guys. Apologies. That needs to be flicked off. There you go, off. Sorry about that.
All good.
Apologies. Where was I? Yes, so the Olympic final. I was going in ranked second into the Olympic final on a 144 because of the times Duncan and I had done at the British Champs. And so I was going in thinking I should win a medal. I'm in a good position to win a medal. If I execute a good swim, I should be able to win a medal. And my coach, Dave, about 2 or 3 days before the Olympic final, he said, look, you need to start thinking about winning the Olympic Games. You need to start thinking about winning an Olympic gold in that 200 meters freestyle, because you can't go in there not thinking about that, having not wrapped your head around it, and expect it to happen all of a sudden. You need to go through that process in your head, because he said no one's ever won an Olympic gold thinking they can't do it, you know. So I took that on board, and you know, I'm never one to, like, it's like goal setting. I'm never like, look, I want to win an Olympic gold medal, or no, I want to go 144.2 and I win an Olympic gold, because, you know, I always think, like, if you say that, if you do it, well, it's like, well, you've already said it, you know, so it's not, you know, there's no big surprise or anything. And if you don't do it, well, you've just setting yourself up to fail a little bit, so you're going to fall short. So when it comes to goal setting, I'm always like, it's more the process that I'm focused on. So I want to focus on the process, and the results will come to fruition at the end. So my coach said that you need to wrap your head around the prospect of winning Olympic gold. And I was very aware of that. And I remember I did the heat swim and it felt good. And I did the semi-final swim and I thought, God, I've messed up. Like I've misjudged this swim. That felt way too easy. That's like a 147 or something. I'm not going to make the final here. that felt so easy. And I hopped out the pool. I was like, oh no, that was too easy. And it was 1:45.2. And I was like, right, something pretty special is going to happen tomorrow, because that's the easiest 1:45 I've ever floated in my life. And you just know when you're on that kind of form and you're perfectly tapered down to the day, and you just know something good's going to happen. And it's like, at that point, the hard work had already been done. And it's like, I just know what kind of race I need to go and execute. And I remember standing behind the blocks, and I think I was in lane 6. Duncan always takes a while to get ready before a race. But I've grown up racing him, and I know he takes absolutely forever. So you don't give it any of your mental energy, because it's just, he always does it, and it's just his routine. And I've been fortunate enough to be in enough competitions with him to know that's how he operates. And I just remember standing behind the blocks, and it's almost that pure tunnel vision, that singular focus on what you've got to do. But surprisingly not nervous. I thought I'd be really nervous. And I remember in the warm-up for the Olympic final, it crept into my head ever so slightly, where it's like, okay, the next hour of your life will determine what the next 20 years of your life are going to look like, and what you'll be remembered as for the rest of your life if things go right. It is that, in the sport we're in, that's the kind of weight an Olympic gold, an individual Olympic gold carries with it. And I was swimming along in the warm-up in Japan, out in Tokyo, in this pool, and I'm like, okay, I need to get that thought very much out of my head, because that's not going to help me do the job I need to do at all. I need to focus on what I've actually got to do. So there was a flicker of that, ever so slightly, an ever so slight wobble, and then you just start going through your process again, and you just execute your pre-race routine. So yeah, a lot going on in your head at that moment.
Yeah, it's a weird balance, isn't it, between having the self-confidence to believe that you can achieve a certain thing and not focusing on that thing that you want to achieve at the same time, because it can negatively impact your result. Like, there's a weird line that you kind of have to toe to optimize the performance.
It is. And it's kind of process versus outcome, isn't it? And which one you focus on is the real important decision you've got to make, even though it's hard to, the outcome justifies the process. So it's hard to, disentangle the two, but you really have to as you're approaching your races.
Guys, it was interesting, Brian. I wonder if there's a 50 freestyle versus 200 freestyle thing, because Brett Hawk said the exact same thing happened to him. So he was a top qualifier in Athens in 50 free, lane 4, and for a fleeting second, he said, you know what? In 23 seconds time or less, my life is going to change. And it went for a quick second and out. But he told us that probably just messed him up for the race. He wasn't being present. And Tom, it happened to you, but it didn't mess you up. Was it because it didn't happen in blocks? Or was it 200? I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And I think I'm a big believer in not shying away from what's about to occur. Like, I know, for example, in 18 months' time that I'm going to have, if all goes to plan, the 200 freestyle final in Paris. And obviously I want to go and do my best possible swim. I'd love to go there and win. No one's ever defended a 200 freestyle title in the history of the sport, and I'm the only person in the world right now with that opportunity. And that could seem like a really daunting task, or a really daunting phrase. When you say it like that, it's like, oh God, it's insane. But they're the facts of the matter. There's no hiding away from it. There's no shying away from, as much as I try and push it out of my mind, it's still going to be the case in 18 months' time, and I'm still going to be doing 4 lengths of a pool in France with those results in my mind. So, I've never been one to not vocalize the thought process and the event and the occasion. I think it's only when you start getting ahead of yourself, when you start thinking, about the outcome and beyond, and what the repercussions of that outcome could be, that's when you start to kind of get taken off that path slightly. So I'm very much a fan of routine on race day, because that keeps me honed in to the process as opposed to the outcome.
Back to the Olympics, it was, we rewatched it today, and God, what a great race. You had the youngsters going out blazing fast, like you said, right next to you, and over in lane 1. Then they started to fade that last 50. You pulled up. You had Duncan Scott flying in the middle of the pool. Yeah. It looked like he was going to pass you up, and, he caught you maybe with 15 meters left, but then you held on, got your hand on first. What do you remember about the race when you're, from being in it or even looking back at it?
Yeah, so I've gone over it quite a few times in my head, and that first 50, when you're tapered and feeling like that on the 200 free, that first 50 is like it's free. It's like it's easy speed. It's like you're not even swimming. You know, you're hovering above the water on that first 50. You just float it out, and I'm out in like a 3.9 or a 4.0 or something like that to feet, and it's just like you haven't even started the race at that point. And then on the second length, I'm next to Huang, and he's going out quick, and he's going out real quick. And that was the real bit in my head where I was like, have faith that he's not going to be able to back this race up. You know, at this point in his career, he's not going to have the faith. He's not going to have the back end to back this race up. Stick to your own race plan. Know what you need to do. And that's I'm so glad I made that call, because it's so easy. You know, everyone's done it where they've got in a race and they start swimming someone else's race. And that's just like, it's game over at that point. You know, you have to stick to what you know you need to do. And that's a super important thing, especially in 200 free. It's such a tactical race, you know? So I thought, almost let him go out. And that's such a weird thing in an Olympic final, letting someone go ahead of you. You know, you would have thought that's the most counterintuitive thing ever. But you almost have to collect yourself and think, actually, this is part of it. I know where I am. I'm so finely tuned. I know where I'll be turning and what I should be feeling. But I'm breathing to the right down that second length, and Duncan's to my left. And I know Duncan had a really strong back end. You know, he had a really strong second half of the race based on where he was that season and how he'd been swimming. And I turned at the 100 mark and I pushed off the wall and I took my first breath. I looked right and I had like a body length on Duncan. And I just remember thinking, thank God, you know, that is the best thing I could have possibly seen when I popped up. Because if he had been with me, knowing his back end, he would have had me, you know, on you know, you saw his last 50. He would have had me on that back end. Get to the 150 mark. Huang's starting to fade down that back end, just as I predicted would happen. I think I go past him like 25, 30 meters to go, whatever it is. And then I'm head down and I'm just thinking, just get your hand on the wall, get your hand on the wall, get your hand on the wall first. Don't mess up your finish. And I've watched that race back, the last 10 meters of that race, so many times. Duncan takes his last stroke before me, but I go over with a long left arm and I've got like quite long levers and I just lunge over, swing my last stroke behind him, but managed to just get on the wall 4/100ths ahead of him. And and then it was just pure shock and surprise and joy and all that good stuff that comes when you win Olympic gold. So yeah, crazy times.
Yeah, the faith that Duncan must have had to let everybody go is like even more extreme than what you're talking about from how far back he was to close that last 50. Yeah. Exactly. Do you ever, when you're in a race that close, I think as a lot of swimmers, you know, you do it so many times in training that you really could like hit the wall really hard and potentially break or jam your finger. Yeah. You hear of some people doing that, but in an Olympic final, it's like kind of how to pick your moments. And you were in such a close race, you couldn't even see to your left what was going on with Duncan at that point. But was there any part of you that's like, I mean, it sounds like you kind of were like every ounce of straight, but that you could possibly get to maximize, you know, the touch and get a better time. But like, I think so many of us, even in championship races, you see people kind of, you know, they bend their wrist and break their wrist so that they don't like actually jam the finger, when maybe there is another 100th there or two for people if they just put a head down and go. I think the most famous one is probably the way Bernard finished the 2008 race against the U.S. And, you know, he just had like not a good finish, and Lezak had a lunge to the finish, and the U.S. wins that epic relay. But, you know, you see that so many times on the underwater camera, and it's like, it makes everybody cringe who knows what it's like to actually finish with good form.
Yeah, because he's done 99.9% of the race. But I think in those Olympic finals, it's just every fiber of your being, every ounce of your strength is just pushing yourself. You know, you hit that higher level slightly, don't you? And I remember a few months before I was in training, and we're doing some sprints and training, we're doing some finish practice. And I was like behind Jimmy, probably was Jimmy, I was going head to head with, James Guy, who I train with. And I did some big lunge and just pipped him on the wall. And Dave was like, you're going to get someone one day with that finish. You'll get someone one day with that finish. And then 2-3 months later, I managed to win the Olympics with that finish. So he called it, and he always likes to remind me of that one. Yeah.
So I swam in dark ages, but I still practice how to touch the touch pad as hard as I can without breaking my finger. I mean, we really made sure like we got it in the finger here, and as soon as we could, try and take the weight and the momentum with your wrist, but make sure that made the contact. And we practiced it a lot. We would do that a lot. Tom, Brian, John, did you guys do drills to really see how fast you could smash that touch pad without breaking your finger?
No, I'm just sitting here listening, thinking of you doing this in the pool over and over.
And we did it, man.
Like, imagine the amount of gains you could have got if you focused more on other stuff instead of that.
Hours of that.
It's making sense now.
Tom, that was 18 months ago. How are you swimming at 200 free now, if any different? Or how do you, and obviously that's the best way to swim 200 freestyle. So you swim 200 free, right? That's what you think. How are you swimming it differently now? Besides staying in your lane, doing your thing, letting people do their thing, being aware. How are you swimming it now? And is you and Dave think that's the best way to swim 200 freestyle? Yeah.
Yeah. At the end of the day, look, the world of 200 frees moved on in the last 5 years. There's no doubt. Jimmy, my training partner, Jimmy won. He was world champion with a 145. Okay, and I remember someone went 144. Like Rio was won in a 144 by obviously Sun Yang, so it shouldn't really count, because he's a convicted drugs cheat. But silver was Chad Leclerc in a 145, but no one was going 144 at that time. 144s just weren't happening. Now it's like 144 just to like be in that top 6 and be in that top 8. The event just went like nuts all of a sudden. From that Olympics onwards. So I remember Duncan and I both went 144s at the trials. That had never been done before by two Brits, dipping under like that. I think Duncan had gone a 144.9 at Gwangju 2019, but for two Brits to go 144 mids all of a sudden. And then you had Katsu Matsumoto went 144 that year. And then in the final, obviously, Sheffer went 144, didn't he? I'm pretty sure. All of a sudden you have all these guys going 144. And then obviously Popovici's gone and dropped that down to a 142.9, which is crazy. That event's moved on even further. So there's no denying the fact that the whole event's moved on. And, all of a sudden we've got this young lad, Popovici, who's kind of setting the world on fire with his times. And frustratingly, it happens to be in my event, but such is the nature of sport. And, you've just got to accept that the world of sport is changing. I remember Ian Thorpe did an interview, I think it was with Brett Hawke. Yeah. This was before the Olympics, and he was like, no one's swimming the 200 free right. No one's taking it out quick enough, And I took out in a 50.4 when I won the Olympics, But even like, I've watched, Phelps's 200 free from Beijing. He said that's one of his proudest races, his 200 free from Beijing. He took it out like an absolute rocket. He went 142.9. He said it's his bravest, it's his ballsiest swim. He put his neck on the line, did the whole race by himself, and it looks like he's going out like a rocket. Or even like Chad Leclerc in Rio when he went out like 2 body lengths ahead of these guys were still 50 points. They're still only 50 points. Like it looks like it's a 48 or something or 49. Yeah. There's only a 50 point. And then all of a sudden you've got guys going out 49s, or 49.8s and stuff like that. Huang out in a 49. I'm pretty sure Popovici out back in Budapest was out 49. I was out 49, but I paid the price for it because I wasn't out too fast. I was just out too hard. I was working the legs too much. So it's becoming, look, you've got to take it out in a 49 now, and a controlled 49 to feet. How many guys in the world can go 49 point and still back up another 100 after it? It's a tough way to swim at 200, but that's the way the event's moved on, and that's what we're training for very much now. So I know that I need to move my 100 free on, because to do an easy 49, you need to have a pretty decent 100 free under your belt. Because you need to float out in a 49.7 before you even think about backing up another 100 off the back of that. Yep. So the sport's changed, the event's changed, and how you swim it has obviously changed off the back of that. And Dave and I are very conscious of that fact. And we're still working hard. We're still doing very similar stuff. And I know that the times I'm doing in training are better than I've ever done. And hopefully the engine and the fitness and all that stuff comes together, because, like I said at the start, it's such a tactical race, isn't it, that 200?
Yeah, like we were talking before, Brian and I were just at men's NCAAs, and we were talking with Leon Marchand in the 200 IM and 400 IM, and his big strategy was just take it 50 by 50, implying that he's pretty much sprinting every 50 of every stroke. Now, obviously, the 200 IM is different than the 200 free, working different muscle groups, but it does seem like we're seeing this progression in the 200s of being able to go out faster and faster, and people trying to just have, like you said, just more front end speed, so that easy first 100 isn't as hard as the 49 should be, or they're just having more confidence in their training that they're going to be able to close it. You mentioned a few things of, like you said, working on your front end speed for your 100 to hopefully get that easy speed going. Are there any other training changes you're making just to, like you said, continue to have that mental strength to know that you're going to be able to come back hard when you know that's going to be hurting that last bit.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right about that. The 200s. Look, the 200 free used to be a timid event. You know, people would go out tactically, and then it was, you know, someone would make a move. Now it's just like, it is a sprint. You know, it's heading that way. It's becoming more and more of a sprint. And you know, that's the nature of the event. So yeah, the stuff I'm working on. Look, we're doing we do a lot of VO200s. So the VO2 heart rate. You know, that real high end work. And essentially, if I'm doing a long course block of VO200s, we did a lot out in Australia when we were on camp back in January, February, and I'm trying to hold 52s, you know, long from a push for back-to-back hundreds, because that's really the middle of the 200 race, you know. Right. So I need to be comfortable going, but even splitting, you know, I need a 26-2, 26-2, you know, not a 25-4, 27-2 or something. You know, I need that even split. So that's, you know, it's getting into the routine, being comfortable with holding that speed. We do lock-in 50s, like long course 53s, where it's literally 26-0, 26-0, 26-0, or 26-3, 20, you know, and it's just like become second nature. We did so many of those out in Australia. So it's just, it's not wildly different to what we were doing before, but it's being conscious of, I've got a new race model. I know what the times are going to break down to. I know how I swim the event. Look, I need to be able to float out, you know, 3.8 and then back up with a 26 for a 49 mid to high, and be okay with that and be comfortable with that. And then know that middle 100 is going to be a 52, you know, because I've done so many of those. So it's very much being comfortable with that level of speed for the 200. And like you said, a mental game as well, you know, having faith in the work I've done, having faith in the taper. You know, swimming an in-season 200 is worlds apart from swimming a tapered 200, because I said at that front end, you know, that just comes naturally. It can kind of spook a few people, you know, they're like, oh God, I'm going out too quick, or this feels too easy, or whatever it might be. So it's having faith in the taper. You know, we're in the middle of one right now as we head into British Champs. So I know that when I go to Sheffield next week for the British Champs, I'll be comfortable going out in the 24 low, because that's where my body is at this time. And I'll be okay with that. And then it's a case of locking into those hundreds that I was speaking about earlier. So that's kind of the approach we're taking.
Have you guys given thought to pushing the underwaters to 15 meters on, especially in the third turn, and what it takes to do that long course?
I think it is definitely a case of, like, I do need to push my underwater slightly more. I think the strength I'm gaining from doing slightly more 100 work is benefiting me in that department. I couldn't do 15 meters because that would tip the balance too much in the fatigue and the hypoxia. Yeah. But there's definitely a case that I sometimes don't work that last wall as much as I should do. And I know that's something I need to be better at. I love that video, you know, going back to Phelps' Beijing 200 free, and this is such a swimming nerdy kind of anecdote, but his last wall on that 200 free, and he just gets under everyone's waves, and that's just, I mean, he was like obviously the best in the world at that. Not quite got Phelps underwaters just yet. It's a work in progress, but you know, I think there's definitely something to be said for having, pushing that last wall a little bit more. But it's so counterintuitive. That's the last thing your body wants to do, isn't it? You know, it wants to get up and get going. So it's tough, but we're working on it.
We'll see.
So you mentioned, go on.
No, I brought it up because we're seeing a lot of NCAA swimmers in yards like doing 7 kicks off the last wall of a 500, or Marchand doing 11 kicks off the last wall of 400 IM, and I just don't understand how to get there. But yeah, it's kind of intuitive for sure. Long course.
But the saying about those short course swimmers, you know, short course and long course, they're like different sports.
Exactly.
You know, they're worlds apart. Like you look at Melbourne, even look at ISL. You know, you've got these big dogs of ISL absolutely cleaning up. Yeah. You know, or the NC2As and stuff. So few of them can translate that into long course swimming. You know, so few of them have that ability to be able to, like Marchand, he's one of the few. You know, he can do some unreal. I've seen his times, obviously incredible. NC2A times, they don't really mean much to me or to anyone over here. So it's you just know if it's quick, if he's breaking records and stuff, you know it's going to be quick. But he can translate that into long course. And I saw that post that Bowman did on his Instagram about Phelps's like number of world records, I think it was, or number of medals at long course versus short course competitions. And he just said, if you want to win Olympic medals, you need to focus on long course, you know, because it's just completely different. You know, like a short course 400 free, I do those because I can get my head around them and I'm okay at them. Compared to a long course 400 free, they're so different. And I think that's a lot to be said about the underwaters. You got that boy who won the who won Melbourne 53, the Cayman Islands, Jordan Crooks, his underwaters were insane. You know, that second wall going against BP, he absolutely was like a rocket off that wall. Is he going to be able to translate that into long course? We're just going to have to wait and see, aren't we? Because you know, you only have 50% of the number of turns and number of the underwaters. So it's really a level. You know, it's a real leveler for everyone, those long course races, and it kind of makes a bit of a different playing field. But you know, at the end of the day, you have to remember the Olympics are won in a long course pool. So
that's right. Yeah.
You know,
Tom, you mentioned trials coming up. What's what are the goals for trials besides just making the team? I mean, you're here you are talking about the transition and how big of a leap the 200 free has made, and this is one of the biggest tests for you to be able to you know, trial out a race strategy. And obviously, like, you know, there's not a ton of those opportunities throughout the year, especially when you're training to peak for long course. So yeah, what are you hoping to achieve coming up here in Sheffield?
You're right. I'm in slightly more of a fortunate position whereby trials are more a process I need to go through, whereby it's kind of go there, execute some good races, stick to my race strategies, get my ticket, and kind of not like I'm physically getting up for it, but emotionally, you know, it doesn't require as much emotional energy as the Worlds or Olympics. And I'm fortunate that I'm in that position because of the times I know I'm capable of doing. So there is an argument. You're right to try out some slightly different race strategies. So I think last year I tried shifting that second 50 quite a lot quicker on the 200 free, I think, and Duncan and I had another good scrap. But I'm doing the same schedule as I was last year: 100 free, 200 free, 200 IM. It is a case, you know, first and foremost, booking tickets on that plane. The 200 free, you know, we haven't seen anything super exciting. Matt went all right, you know, 147 out in America, didn't he? He went okay. The 2 IM, Duncan's been going all right, but he hasn't gone super quick this year. You know, he wasn't super fast at Edinburgh. You know, he'll be the first one to admit that as well. So that 200 free, 200 IM, we'll kind of see how that goes. But I think the 100 free is going to be really interesting. You know, you have a lot of guys trialing for that 100 free now, and you know, you got to remember we've got in terms of tapered long course meets, trials this year, Worlds, trials, and then the Olympic Games. You've got 3 tapered meets. You know, so this is one of the real big 3 testers to see not only where I'm at as myself, but you know, I've got a pretty good idea of what I'm able to go and do and what it'll require to get on the team. But it's also that slightly younger group of swimmers, you know, who are 15 months away from the Olympics. Who's going to be on that 4x1 for us? Who's going to be on that 4x2? You know, are we going to have the depth, or have a few people moved on and not enough people kind of come up through the ranks? It's a real tester, and I think British swimming are going to have a keen eye on those relays because they're putting a real emphasis on that kind of medal approach. So as much as it is, you know, I need to go there and do my job, I also love British Champs because you really get a gauge of where the rest of the nation's at, and obviously just out of interest, but also from a slightly selfish standpoint for the relays because, you know, how everyone else is swimming, my fellow 100, 200 freestylers, that affects my relay medal chances in 18 months' time. And, you know, that's really important for me.
Yeah, we've been following more and more British trials, and like you said, a lot of it is some great fast swimming, and it's more accessible nowadays, and also the relay implications, like you said. But one gripe I have, I'm watching trials, and let's go 200 free, you and Duncan. We have a great race here in the middle of the pool, touching the wall in 144 world leading time.
I know. Well, I tell you
what can they do? I mean, we got Rowdy up there screaming God knows what, at least yelling reaction times. Tell us,
I know, we need your commentator. It's like, I don't know who was commentating when I was out in ISL. It's so funny because, like, I love it. I think it's an American thing. But I remember Dressel would be swimming like, here comes Dressel, and it's everyone's going nuts and stuff like that. You know, that's what we need, a little bit of that.
You get Sonny Trigg. Get Sonny in there. Sonny's good. He's pretty loud.
You'll have to send a few of true. You'll have to send a few of your guys over to do our British Champs because I'll tell you what, Sheffield, like, it's a nice well, it's not a nice venue actually. It's a bit old now, but but you know, some races you could hear a pin drop. You need something to get it a bit psyched up a little bit. So especially when you got world trials 2021 for the Olympics. Me and Duncan went 144.4 and 144.5.
It was huge.
The 2 fastest times in the world. And it was like, obviously it's COVID times. There weren't. Yeah, let's see. I was hearing crickets, you know, from outside the A bit of tumbleweed was going by.
Yep.
Full side. It's like
the commentating. It's like the commentating links golf lane 4.
Oh no, yeah, something like that. So
no, it's cricket at Lords, guys. I went to see cricket at Lords. I'm from the West Indies, and we're drinking rum, we're partying, we're dancing, and everything. And you go to Lords, and it's like,
yeah, very polite. Maybe it's a British thing. I don't know.
Okay, wait. I got to ask you. You said this on your last podcast that you play golf on taper.
Yeah. It's the only thing that doesn't taper down. It's the amount of golf I play. I play more in the 3 weeks of taper than I do for like the 3 months prior. I think because you just like got a lot more free time and you're not very tired, So it's not good though, because I feel like I'm getting fatigued from golfing, and it's like that's the opposite of what you want to be doing on taper. So I'm trying to rein it in a little bit more. But yeah, I go out with Jimmy, my training partner, and we play a few times. So I still need a bit more practice to beat him, but yeah.
Make sure you got a good chiropractor and massage therapist handy.
I know.
Chunk it real bad.
I know. Yeah, go put my shoulder out or something.
What kind of golfer are you? What's your handicap?
Oh mate, honestly, I couldn't even tell you. I've literally only played 18 like 3 times in my life. So I mean, probably maybe pitching about like 18 or 20 or something like that. If I'm having a good day. But yeah, it's all quite. The only reason I started playing, to be honest with you, mate, was in the lead up to the Olympics. Jimmy was like, "Oh, when we go to the village, you're going to do a lot more walking than you probably would normally do." So he was like to me, he's like, "Try and get out for some walks in the day if you can, just because otherwise you'll get to the games, you'll start walking to the canteen and stuff, and you'll be absolutely knackered by the time your race comes around."
Mm-hmm.
And I'd never picked up a golf club in my life. And I got some cheap ones off eBay. And I was like, "Oh, Jim, do you want to," because he's been playing for years. Jim's played for ages. He's really, really good. And he was like, "Oh, do you want to," I was like, "Do you want to play like 9 holes on a Wednesday afternoon or something?" And we just started to build up our step count for the Olympic Games by playing a bit of golf, and then, started to really enjoy it and been trying to play a little bit more. But it's just time down at the range and stuff. When you're doing a full week of training, you're absolutely knackered. The last thing you want to do is get up, get in your car, drive up to the range and start hitting some balls. And the weather's pretty shit here, 75% of the year. So, need to get down a little bit more.
Brian, you did say it helped you with the connections, right? With connecting the hip and the levers and all that.
Yeah, but I wouldn't do it on taper though, because I was concerned that I would chunk it and end up with some sort of weird kind of shoulder thing. But I always felt with freestyle that the timing of my hips and the hand hit in golf was kind of similar to the way that I thought about hand entry and just hip alignment in freestyle. For some reason, mentally, even though they're different motions, there's something about the coordination between those two.
The cross-link.
I liked it during training, and I happened to I had an apartment once that was on a golf course, and I had a par 5 right out my front door. So every evening I would just go out there and pour a beer or something, and then grab a few balls and a couple clubs and just go play the par 5. It was great.
That's so nice. That's nice. That's the dream.
Yeah.
Tom, I want to talk a bit about British swimming at a high level. So we, right after the trials in 2020, we had a couple. You guys just stunned the world with your trials, and so we had Joe Litchfield on, we had Matt Richards on, and we're talking about those trials and how freaking fast it was, and the world was on notice, right? For the 4x1, especially 4x2, and you know what happened in the 4x2. The secret's out. British freestylers, British swimming is freaking there, right? Legit. But it's a bit of a target on your back now, but you also have a bunch more young kids coming up. Lewis Burrows, these people coming up. Talk about that. Talk about the pride in that 4x2 and the 4x1, the reserves you have, the bench you have, and I'm making you look forward, but looking forward to Worlds and even next year.
Yeah. So I'll start with the 4x2. The 4x2 team, there was a lot of history there. They won in 2015. I'm pretty sure. 2016 they got the silver behind you guys, and then they went ahead and won in 2017 as well. And I was a young athlete. I was a young swimmer at this point. 2016 Rio was the first time I watched the swimming competition. Because I was starting to get into it a little bit more, and swimming was studying in school was always like priority number 1 for me. But then I was 16 years old when Rio was happening, and I started to take more of a keen interest in it. I remember watching the guys, and I remember watching Jimmy race against Phelps at his last ever race on that medley relay. They dove in together, and I was, that's a real strong memory of mine. Anyway, 2018 was my first time on a senior team. I went to Europeans in 2018, and I got picked for the 4x2, which I wasn't expecting. I got picked for the final, and we won gold. You know, so all of a sudden, I went from just going to this competition that I didn't think I was even going to get selected for to winning gold at the Europeans. And it was really prestigious to be part of this 4x2 team. You know, everyone wants a piece of this action. Everyone wants to be part of this 4x2. And I was in the team with Callum Jarvis, Duncan Scott, and James Guy. You know, these are like legends of British swimming. And I remember I was in the call room with them. And it's so funny telling this story now because Jimmy's like my closest mate. Like we're hanging out all the time and stuff like that. But 2018, I'd never met him before. I didn't know who he was. You know, never spoken to him before. I'm in the call room. I'm like, oh my God, it's Duncan Scott and it's James Guy. You know, you're really quite in awe. And that was an incredible start to my senior career. You know, I think that's a real important developmental experience for me. Roll around 2019, we had the 4x2 and we come 5th. And it's like a real knockback. You know, the defending world champions coming 5th. But we went back to the drawing board. We had this meeting. And I remember Dave saying to me, he's like, that's the best thing that could have happened to you guys because it's going to make you really hungry for this 4x2. Anyway, come Olympic year, the 4x2, it's like it's been bubbling up in the background and getting stronger and stronger. And we got to the trials and it was like you had to go under 147 to make the final. Now, I know for you guys, you know, in America, you've got a lot more depth than we do. You know, you have loads of guys, 146, 147. You know, you have that depth. But for us, like 8 guys, 147 and quicker was like, oh my God, this is insane. Yeah. It's the fastest final we've ever seen. And then we have 2 guys that go 144 mid, Matt, who goes a 145, and Jimmy, who's obviously a 145 swimmer, and he split a 143 in the past. And it's like, you know, something pretty special is happening here. We get to the Olympic Games, we have the 200 free, and we're heading into the 4x2 with the Olympic champion and the Olympic silver medalist on our team. And honestly, guys, it's like we'd won the race before we even walked out. It was just, we were so calm and collected. We knew what we had to do. We were confident. We're in the cool room. The 4 of us, we're having a laugh. We're having a joke. I led out. Honestly, that lead out leg, that's one of the roughest 200 frees I've done. I was on my arse. I was absolutely spent. I went a second slower than I did the morning before, you know, because I'd done the heat the night before, which in hindsight I probably shouldn't have done. I hadn't slept all night as I was just all over the place. So I had a rough, you know, still 145. It was okay. It was enough to get us by. Matt goes in, splits 145. Great. Jimmy splits 144. Yeah. And I see Duncan hit the water. I'm like, we've won the 4x2. You know, we're Olympic champions on the 4x2. And it's just like, I remember that feeling so clearly. It's like watching one of your closest pals swimming into the wall to win you an Olympic gold medal after winning an Olympic gold the day before. And it's just like the maddest 24 hours of my life. You know, it's a real special memory of mine. So that was incredible. You know, that was a highlight. This has been the culmination of 5 or 6 years of work, all of a sudden coming together. And we'd beaten you guys, which was a great feeling, obviously. We're just off the world record, but we were really close to it. And it was really exciting. And then, you know, 200 frees become the blue ribbon event in British swimming. You know, it's the last event on the Sunday evening. So 2 weeks now, the British Championships, it's really become an exciting event because everyone wants a piece of that pie. You know, everyone wants to get stuck in with the 4x2. Budapest last year, it was tough because we didn't have Duncan. Matt wasn't swimming very quickly last year. He'll be the first one to admit that. You know, he was like 149, 148 split. You know, it's not super quick. Jimmy, 146 lead off. It's okay. Look, that wasn't a great world champs. You know, no one was on the best form. I wasn't on amazing form, but still, you know, 143.5 for that split. I was still really happy with that. I was chasing down Mac, and we managed to sneak the bronze. But you need the stars to align. You know, we haven't got the depth to really back up, you know, loads of guys going 145 and 146 like you lot have. You know, we need all 4 of our guys to be on it and to really be delivering the goods. So I'm looking at it this year and I'm like, I know what Jimmy can do. I see him in training every day. I know he's consistent. I know he's going to put a good swim in. I'm confident I can do a good swim on the relay. You know, I'll be back down where I need to be. Duncan, you got real hope that he can, you know, pull something out of the bag. He you know, he's a relay swimmer. You look at what he did against Adrian in Guangzhou. You know, you look at what he's done at the Olympic Games, you know, 143 and all these crazy other splits, stuff like that. That 4th guy, look, Matt's already got a 147 this year. That's looking better than he was last year. So hopefully he can go quick and hopefully he can go even quicker in the relay. So, yeah, it's going to be a real test, this World Champs, and it's going to be a real test as to 12 months out from the Olympic Games, what kind of team can we pull together? And it's going to be really interesting to see. And then the same on the 4x1 free. That's another one that's been building up, you know, because we have got slightly more depth there. You know, myself, Duncan, Lewis Burris, Jacob Whittle, Matt Richards, Ed Mildred, who I train with. He's a great swimmer, great 100 freestyle swimmer. So I think that's going to be an exciting one as well. But like I said, we need 4 guys to have the meets of their lives. And we've had loads of meetings about it from British swimming because everyone knows they have a role to play. And that's very much the ethos heading into Paris. So, look, I think those freestyle relays are going to be really, really exciting over the next, 15, 16 months.
We had Roland Skuman on, and he was recalling the whole lead up. We asked him, how did South Africa win that gold medal in 2004 in the 4x1? And, you know, they hardly made the finals the year before. And one thing he talked about was that the 2 leaders, Reich and himself, would get together and say, you know what, we can do this. We got 5 guys who go 48s. We can do this. And they used to call each other up and check on each other regularly and say, yo, Darian, Young, you can do this. Like encouraging and speaking. They didn't train together, but they spoke to each other and they kept together and kept that solidarity and that pump. Do you see yourself calling up the folks, you know, even though you're rivals? Do you guys communicate and set those goals together?
So we had a meeting about this at the start of the year. All the lads in British Swimming had a boys relay camp within British Swimming. Had this really, really great psychology session that really sticks out in my mind. And it was a 3-hour-long session. It was incredible. And everyone was really honest and upfront and quite vulnerable as well, which is where you really build those great, you know, team bonds, is showing a degree of vulnerability. Yeah. And I think we came to the agreement that we're British. We can't force it. You know, we haven't got that same kind of Americanism, you know, that you guys do, where it's like, you know, come on, bro, let's do, you know, all that kind of, you know, it's slightly different. It's slightly more reserved, I think, slightly more conservative, whereby we still have that energy and that repertoire, but it's not that, you know, hands in the middle, 3, 2, 1, go blue, or whatever it is. You know, it's a little bit different. So I think we came up with the ethos that, you know, you're doing it for the boys. You know, we're doing it for the boys, and everyone's being held accountable. You know, and that's the real key. You know, it's building a healthy culture, and like you said, being able to pull people up and hold people accountable, and it's creating that environment within the national training centres, and that's really, really key. So I think there is that. Maybe not to the same extent as some other countries, like I said, but I do think that it's a healthy approach whereby people want to be a part of this. People want to earn their spots on the relay, you know, because it's almost like a snowball effect. Once you have a great result at Olympic Games or World Champs, you know, these relays are held in like a high stead. You know, they've got they're quite grand and they're important and they're impressive. And you have these young lads being like, God, I really want to be part of that 4x2. I want to be up there with Tom and Duncan and Jimmy, and you know, I really want to. It's you know, it holds a high position within British swimming, these relays now, and I think that's really important because you have young guys wanting to earn their position, and it's a real, you know, you have to earn your spot. It's that kind of approach. Nothing's given with these relays, you know, and as soon as you take your foot off the gas, there's someone else there to take that spot, and it's flipping that mentality around where it's not like, oh, you know, we might do a relay with Team GB or British Swimming, but, you know, I don't know if we'll make a final or we might come sixth. It's like, if you're there to win medals, you know, and you're there to do your job. And that's a really important part of it. So a slightly different mentality to you guys and maybe to the South Africans, but definitely that mindset's there.
Hell yeah. All right, Tom, we're going to let you go, but I got a few rapid fire questions and then we'll end it.
All right.
What's the hardest race in swimming?
The 400 IM.
Olympic gold or world record?
Olympic gold.
Do you pee in the pool? Or we in the pool?
Yes, I do, sometimes.
Who on Team G does the best American accent?
Oh, probably Duncan probably does a good one. We had an American lad, young American lad who's actually British, who raced over at Commie Games, Johnny Marshall. I remember he just had a pretty strong accent. Yeah, you don't get many American accents here, so yeah, they're quite funny when you hear them.
All the bros you talked about. Okay, what time wins a medal in the 200 free in Paris?
144 low for a medal.
Okay.
144 flat maybe.
All right, and then we always have to know, do you do social kick in training?
Oh yeah, all the time. Love it. Dave tells us off, but I love it.
There's always got to be something for you in there, right? Can't have the coach's way.
Exactly. Highlight of the session, of course.
Well, mate, thanks so much for spending the time hanging out with us. We're looking forward to watching your race at trials coming up. And yeah, wish you all the best with the continued success of the Weekly Freestyle. It's super fun. Listen, everybody listens to this. Go listen to the Weekly Freestyle. It's awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
Good stuff. Cheers, fellas.
Yeah, buddy. Thanks. That's it for this episode of Social Kick, and we'll see you next time.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us. If you're enjoying Social Kick, tell your friends about it. And be sure to tell us what you liked by leaving a comment. And subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Instagram. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Social Kick. And you can find all of our content on our website,